After marriage, I picked up my pregnant wife's phone for the first time and discovered her secret. A man claiming to be a midwife sent her flirtatious messages late at night. Darling, I miss you so much I can't sleep all night. It's unbearable. Help me tomorrow. Furious, yet mindful that the child in her belly might be mine. I planned to keep the child, but leave the mother. But I never expected this child wasn't even mine. 01 My name is Chun Feng. My wife Tang Yuan and I have been married for less than 6 months, with a 4-month-old baby. Our little life was quite sweet. But after my wife got pregnant, she signed up for some seemingly useless training courses, like midwifery classes and prenatal relaxation courses for expectant mothers. Although the expenses were considerable, I still supported her ideas. At night, Tang Yuan slept soundly with her back turned to me, listening to her steady, rhythmic breathing. My entire heart felt as if it were soaked in a jar of honey, indescribably sweet, gazing at her rounded belly. I had even settled on the child's name in my mind. At this thought, I couldn't resist reaching out to touch her belly, almost able to feel the pulse of life beneath my fingers. Just as I was about to hold Tang Yuan and go to sleep, the phone beside me lit up. The dim light shone on my face as I suddenly opened my eyes, my heart pounding. It was Tang Yuan's phone. Who could be messaging at this late hour? Ever since being with Tang Yuan, I trusted her and never looked at her phone. But this time, maybe a friend had something urgent, as if justifying it to myself. I picked up Tang Yuan's phone. In the pitch-black room, only the glow of the phone screen flickered. I hesitated, but ultimately tapped open the message notification. Buried beneath countless pinned messages was the notification that had just popped up. My heart sank as I stared at that inconspicuous little red, a sense of foreboding washing over me. The sender was a man who claimed to be a midwifery instructor. I thought it was a class notification, so I confidently glanced at the screen. With just one look, my heart instantly sank halfway. Baby, I miss you so much I can't sleep all night. It's unbearable. Help me tomorrow. Such an ambiguous message made my eyes widen in shock. Trembling, I kept scrolling through the screen, trying to find previous messages, only to discover there was absolutely nothing. I searched through the records again, unwilling to give up. Tang Yuan had actually never spoken a single word to this man before. How could this be possible? I refused to believe the fact that my wife had cheated on me. The messages kept coming from the other side, my head buzzing and blank. One moment, I was thinking about being the child's father and living a good life with Tang Yuan. The next moment, it felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over my head. Just then, my wife beside me showed signs of waking up, yawning sleepily. I snapped back to reality, put the phone back where it was, and pretended to have been woken by her as I wrapped my arm around her waist. Tang Yuan slowly opened her eyes. Honey, she whispered. At this moment, I opened my mouth but couldn't utter a word. My throat tight as numbness spread from my spine across my entire back. After a long pause, I patted her arm. Sleep now. Don't you have class tomorrow? At the mention of class, a faint, almost imperceptible smile flickered across Tang Yuan's calm face as she nodded, as if in anticipation. Yes, tomorrow's class is in the evening. Why would a proper midwifery class be held at night? I hated myself for not discovering it sooner. Clenching my teeth, I suppressed the fury in my heart, resisting the urge to drag her up and confront her right then. Tomorrow night's midwifery class. I'll see what new tricks they have up their sleeves. 02 time came the next evening. After dinner, as soon as I stood up, Tang Yuan rushed over in a flash and wrapped her arms around my waist, burying her head against my chest. She nuzzled me haphazardly. Husband, I have to go to class soon. I already miss you so much. I forced an awkward smile and ruffled my wife's hair as usual. I'll wait for you to come home. I pressed against Tang Yuan's shoulders, trying to break free from her embrace, but she refused to let go. My stomach churned violently. Just thinking about what I'd seen on the phone made me feel like vomiting at the sight of Tang Yuan before me. She keeps saying she loves me, yet she cheats even while carrying my child. How could Tang Yuan have become like this? Recalling all those past moments now, I just feel ridiculous. Tang Yuan released her grip, stood on tiptoe, and planted a kiss on my cheek. I remained silent, merely wiping the saliva off my face with disgust the moment she turned her back. After she left, I went downstairs and followed her in my car, following the address the man had sent last night. I parked my car in front of a maternity and baby store. Getting out of the car, I stood at the entrance, frowning, wondering if I had come to the wrong place. At that moment, the tightly shut door opened. The shop assistant glanced at me, then gestured for me to enter. I stepped inside, a cool breeze brushing against my face. Ignoring the assistant's recommendations, I paced back and forth in the room, just as I thought I'd come to the wrong place and was about to leave. My wife's voice suddenly drifted down from upstairs. My heart skipped a beat as I was about to go upstairs, only to be stopped by 2 saleswomen. Sir, that's a training class. Outsiders aren't allowed in. I took a deep breath and slipped 2 bills to the saleswoman. I'm the husband of one of the students, just going up to check. Hearing this, the 2 women exchanged glances and stopped blocking my way. As my wife's voice grew louder, my heart pounded wildly, rising to my throat. I feared the voice might be Tang Yuan's, yet also feared it wasn't. Suddenly, I stopped in my tracks and stared blankly through the narrow glass window into the training room. I couldn't bear to watch any longer and returned home in despair. The house was unlit, and in the darkness, I only heard the door click open. The dim yellow light in the hallway stretched Tang Yuan's shadow long and thin. She stood at the doorway, looking at me with confusion. The light snapped on. Tang Yuan energetically kicked off her shoes and scampered over to throw her arms around me. "Husband, I miss you so much." Her body still carried the scent of recent pleasure. Pleasure from another man. I gritted my teeth, unable to make a sound. Tang Yuan released me and happily took off her clothes to shower, listening to the sound of running water. I glanced at the phone on the coffee table. In the end, I couldn't resist and picked up her phone. I glanced at Tang Yuan busy in the bathroom, guessing she was desperately washing away the scent of another man. After searching for a long time, I still hadn't found any useful information. Suddenly, a comment from a niche platform popped up. I instinctively clicked on it, only to see something I would never forget for the rest of my life. Countless photos of Tang Yuan wearing nothing but underwear during her pregnancy were posted by her on social media. The comments below were even more unspeakably vulgar. My breathing grew ragged, my teeth grinding so hard they audibly creaked. After swiftly photographing all the evidence, my wife's voice suddenly rang out behind me. "Honey, what are you doing?" 03. I was startled by my wife's sudden appearance and quickly put down my phone. "I saw your phone had a notification and was worried it might be an emergency from a friend." Tang Yuan's probing, suspicious gaze swept over me. My heart skipped a beat, but I calmly handed her the phone. "See, I hadn't even looked at it yet when you showed up." She didn't respond, giving me a sidelong glance before snatching the phone from my hand. My hanging hand clenched into a fist, the palm drenched in cold sweat. Tang Yuan flipped through her phone, her expression gradually softening. She set it down and wrapped her arms around my neck. Fresh from the shower, her body was damp and slightly sticky. I sniffed the air. The strong scent of shower gel couldn't mask the lingering stench of her recent infidelity. I was utterly disgusted and pushed her away before sitting down on the sofa. Tang Yuan wiped the remaining water droplets from her neck, leaned against my shoulder, and caressed her belly while fantasizing about a beautiful future with me. "Honey, do you think the baby in my belly will be a boy or a girl? Will they look more like me or more like you when they're born?" If it had been me from just a day ago hearing these words, I would have happily patted her head and told her I'd love our baby no matter what. But today, seeing her smiling face, I only felt overwhelming disgust. Just moments ago, she was entangled with another man while carrying our child, and now she comes home to plan a future with me. Tang Yuan must really think I'm a complete fool, taking me for some kind of sucker. Marrying her back then must have been a moment of blindness on my part, bringing this disaster into my home. The mere thought of it makes my teeth grind with fury. Late at night, Tang Yuan lay with her back to me, the faint glow from her phone screen casting light over me. Clutching her phone, her face lit up with a radiant smile, while the screen displayed an unspeakable conversation. I gasped sharply. Tang Yuan took great pleasure in it, even secretly pleasuring herself to the man's provocative words behind my back. My heart pounded wildly, as if it might leap out of my throat at any moment. At daybreak, Tang Yuan didn't even bother with breakfast, just packed her things and prepared to leave for class. But this time, I stood at the doorway and stopped her. She looked at me in confusion. "Honey, we'll be late for class if we don't leave now." I didn't speak, just kept staring at her. Tang Yuan clearly grew flustered, taking 2 steps back while nervously rubbing her hands together. "Wife, I'll go to class with you today." At these words, Tang Yuan's smile froze on her face. She guiltily touched her neck, avoiding my gaze. "What are you going to do there? The midwife instructor won't let you into the classroom anyway." I gave a faint smile, pressed her shoulders, and leaned closer. "Then I'll just stand at the door and watch." Seeing this, Tang Yuan still wanted to stop me, but I firmly held her body in place, adopting a stance that she couldn't go unless she took me with her. In the end, Tang Yuan had a compromise. Standing at the door, the man's suggestive gaze fixed intently on Tang Yuan, who lay coyly on the yoga mat. I could no longer hold back. With one kick, I flung the door open, grabbed Tang Yuan by the arm, and yanked her upright. "What the hell is this? Daring to act like this right in front of me? If I hadn't come, would you too have started playing around?" Tang Yuan pressed her lips together, about to explain, but the man rolled his eyes dismissively. "Sir, this is a professional lesson." I ignored his words and kept pressing Tang Yuan with questions. Tang Yuan's face turned red with urgency. Amid the argument, Tang Yuan suddenly showed signs of pain, clutching her stomach as she collapsed to the ground. Gritting her teeth, she cried out, "It hurts! It hurts! Something terrible has happened." 04. After following the ambulance to the hospital, I paced anxiously in the hallway. It wasn't Tang Yuan I was concerned about. I was worried about the child in her womb. Repenting my earlier reckless actions, I covered my face with my hands and slowly crouched down in despair and helplessness. Suddenly, the door to the hospital room opened. The doctor looked at my anxious expression and remained silent, as if at a loss for words. Only when I stood up did he finally speak. The baby is over 6 months along. Very stable. Everything's fine. Hearing this, my words of gratitude caught in my throat. I stared at the doctor in disbelief, my eyes wide. Suddenly, I grabbed his hand. Doctor, how many months did you say? The doctor looked at me as if I were an idiot. Over 6 months already. Her belly's that big, can't you tell? My mouth hung open, and for a long moment, I couldn't utter a word, because I had never seen a pregnant woman in real life before. I didn't have much concept of belly sizes. Plus, Tang Yuan mentioned that the hospital said her fetus was oversized. I didn't pay much attention to it. Tang Yuan and I had been married for less than half a month, yet the baby was already over 6 months along. My heart sank as an utterly devastating thought surfaced in my mind. Could this child possibly be? I didn't even dare to think further. After the doctor left, I stood trembling at the door, completely at a loss. I forced myself to believe it was the doctor's mistake, stubbornly convinced that the child was mine. Just as I was consumed by extreme anxiety, Tang Yuan's faint voice came from inside the room. Honey, I want some water. Only then did I snap out of it. I pinched my thigh hard and forced a smile, pretending to know nothing as I poured Tang Yuan a glass of water. She held the cup with rosy cheeks, gulping down the water as if nothing had happened. I was deeply suspicious. Honey, this hospital is so unreliable. The doctor just told me the baby is over 6 months old. That's just ridiculous. As I finished speaking, I saw the panic in Tang Yuan's eyes, and my heart instantly sank to the pit of my stomach. But she quickly lifted her head and grabbed my hand with a bright smile. Darling, let's go to another hospital. This one is totally unreliable. I nodded. Just as I was about to take Tang Yuan and leave the hospital, my phone suddenly rang. I never expected the boss to suddenly call me back to work overtime. I glanced at Tang Yuan, who looked somewhat delighted, and agreed to the boss's request. After hanging up the phone, I was about to speak when Tang Yuan waved me off. Hurry up and go. I'll head back on my own later. Just as I stepped out of the ward, I heard Tang Yuan's ecstatic voice. Baby, today was so thrilling. As soon as I pushed open the door after work, Tang Yuan's coquettish moans mingled with a man's panting reached my ears. My body froze instantly, blood rushing backward as I stood rooted to the spot. She'd actually brought a man home. 05, I took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the fury in my heart. My lips pressed tightly together. A faint light came from the bedroom. The entangled shadows of 2 figures cast upon the doorway. Reason was gradually devoured by rage, my clenched fists trembling uncontrollably. At that moment, Tang Yuan's words shattered what little remained of my composure. Chun Feng is such a fool. He can't even tell how big my belly has gotten. Just think how satisfying it'll be. My child will eat Chun Feng's food, spend Chun Feng's money, and still call me dad. After a pause, the man suddenly seemed to remember something, and his wife will have to call me dad too. Tang Yuan playfully scolded him. I couldn't listen any longer. Clenching my fists, I strode toward the bedroom. What if one day Chun Feng catches us in bed? Wouldn't that be perfect? Saves us the trouble of telling him. Those words snapped me back to my senses. I stopped in my tracks, watching their silhouettes, a smirk curling at the corner of my mouth. If I were to grab them like a madman, wouldn't I be playing right into their hands? I refused to give them that satisfaction. With that thought, I turned and walked away without looking back. At first, for the sake of the child in her belly, I didn't want to expose Tang Yuan directly. But now the plan to keep the child and discard the mother is unnecessary. The child in her belly isn't mine. I can finally take my revenge on them without restraint. I lied and said I had worked overtime all night. When I returned home, Tang Yuan was sprawled on the sofa, fast asleep. The air was thick with an unmistakably intimate scent. Looking at the disheveled bedroom, I couldn't even bear to look directly. Honey, you're back. Hearing Tang Yuan's voice, I turned my stiffened head mechanically and forced a composed smile. Were you feeling unwell today? I was so worried about you at work. Tang Yuan instinctively felt a pang of guilt upon hearing this. She let out an awkward laugh, patted her belly, and shook her head. Just as I was about to head to the bedroom, she let out a shriek as if her tail had been stepped on and blocked my way. I stopped in my tracks and looked at her with feigned ignorance. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead as she pressed her lips together. You worked all day? Honey, she said. Why don't you go take a shower first? I didn't ask further and turned to enter the bathroom. The moment I closed the door, I heard Tang Yuan's hurried footsteps, listening to her bustling about in the bedroom. I didn't hesitate to step onto the toilet and install a mini surveillance camera on the water heater. I glanced at the tightly shut bathroom door before finally connecting the camera to my phone with peace of mind. Everything was ready, so I took a quick shower. I don't know how much time had passed until the sound of running water suddenly stopped, and Tang Yuan's voice came through. Honey, do you still have to work overtime these days? I casually grabbed a towel, but before I could dry myself, I noticed something was wrong. The warm white towel was stained with something sticky. My heart sank, and my grip on the towel tightened, perhaps noticing my prolonged silence. Tang Yuan suddenly pushed open the bedroom door. She glanced at me first, then her gaze fell upon the towel in my hand. Her eyes flashed with panic. I swallowed hard and, to avoid arousing Tang Yuan's suspicion, forced myself to press the towel against my body despite the overwhelming disgust. As the cold, damp sensation spread across my skin, my scalp tightened. Maintaining a natural expression, I replied to Tang Yuan. Work's been hectic lately. Can't stay home with you and the baby. Need to pull overtime tonight too. Tang Yuan lowered her head in disappointment, yet her eyes sparkled with excitement. She nodded and returned to the bedroom. Even through the door, I could still hear her words. Darling, both the baby and I have missed you so much. Come to my place tonight. Don't forget. After washing the filth from my arms, I glanced at the surveillance cameras scattered in every corner and sneered inwardly. 06 after dinner. I sat on the sofa yawning. Tang Yuan kept stealing glances at me, visibly anxious, opening her mouth but saying nothing. I sat up and looked at her. What's wrong? The woman's gaze darted away. She absent-mindedly lifted her head before leaning against me again, one hand stroking my cheek back and forth. Honey, no overtime tonight. So Tang Yuan was eagerly waiting for me to leave so she could have a wild night with that man at home. Huh. I picked up my phone to check, stroked my chin, and replied. The boss said I should go back to the office a bit later. Tang Yuan lowered her eyes and slipped into the bathroom with her phone. As if deep in thought, the crisp sound of fingers tapping on the screen echoed. I just sat quietly on the sofa. It wasn't until midnight, when Tang Yuan saw I still hadn't left, that she glanced nervously at the chat records on her phone and hastily handed me 2 jackets. Honey, shouldn't you be heading back to work now? As soon as the words left her mouth, knocking sounded at the door. Tang Yuan's face instantly drained of color, her entire body stiffening as she blocked my path. Ignoring her, I pushed open the front door without surprise. The moment the door opened, the man grabbed my shoulders, still clutching a flower he'd picked from the neighborhood. Without hesitation, I seized the man by his collar, chasing me all the way to my home. Looking to die, are you? Hearing my words, the man immediately let go, thrashing violently to break free from my grip. The force in my grip grew heavier. The man's eyes filled with terror, his pleading gaze falling upon Tang Yuan. What are you doing in my house so late at night? I questioned him, yet made no mention of their affair. Perfect timing. We can settle both old and new scores at once. The man wiped the sweat from his forehead and forced a smile. I'm here for home instruction. Your wife is far along in her pregnancy and needs to take all necessary precautions. Hearing this, Tang Yuan immediately understood and stepped in front of me, tugging at my arm to make me release the man. Honey, he's the midwife instructor coming to teach at home. Don't misunderstand. After speaking, she even winked at the man. The man nodded. I released my grip, and just as the two of them sighed in relief, I grabbed Tang Yuan's shoulder, yanked her collar, and glared at her furiously. A misunderstanding. I told you to stop attending those useless classes. Did my words go in one ear and out the other? Tang Yuan staggered backward in fright, her lower back hitting the wall. She let out a muffled groan, her face twisted in pain as she clutched her stomach. Honey, don't do this. I'm scared. Before she could finish speaking, the man behind her lost his temper and suddenly lunged at me, throwing a punch straight at my face. The blow stunned me for a second, but I quickly regained my senses. I released Tang Yuan and grabbed the man by his hair. The man's screams mixed with Tang Yuan's shocked cries echoed in my ears. My emotions grew increasingly intense as I grabbed the man by the hair and kicked him square in the abdomen. Who would believe you're giving classes this late at night? Do you really think I'm that stupid? You were already getting handsy with my wife during daytime classes. What the hell were you planning to do with her at night? The man hunched over and waved his hands in surrender. He opened his mouth to explain, but I didn't give him the chance, yanking his hair to force him upright. Just as he was about to speak, I covered his mouth. Tang Yuan panicked, afraid I might suffocate him, and quickly grabbed my wrist. Clutching her stomach, she pleaded in a near-begging tone. Husband, for the sake of the baby in my belly, let go. Seeing I remained unmoved, she covered her own mouth as tears streamed down her face. Shin Feng, let go. 07, after breaking free from my grip, the man clutched his head and took a step back, only to kick the coffee table. The glass coffee table couldn't withstand such a forceful kick. With a crash, shards of glass scattered across the floor. Tang Yuan let out a scream and covered her ears in fright. The man plopped down onto the shattered glass fragments, the shards piercing his flesh as streaks of blood seeped out. His face contorted in pain as he clutched his buttocks and slowly rose to his feet. You're insane. I'm calling the police. At the mention of police, my interest peaked, and I stepped forward deliberately. The man stared at me with terror-filled eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Frozen in place, Tang Yuan actually fell for such a loser. The next second, I kicked the man in the knee. He cried out in pain as he knelt on the shattered glass covering the floor. Grabbing him by the collar, I dragged him into the bedroom, ignoring Tang Yuan's protests. Shin Feng, don't be rash. Think about our child. Our baby can't grow up without a father. Our child. I turned to look at Tang Yuan, watching as the woman lied without batting an eye, spinning her tail as if it were the truth. Tang Yuan rambled on relentlessly, her words buzzing in my head like a swarm of wasps. Without hesitation, I grabbed Tang Yuan's arm and shoved her into the bedroom too. The moment the door closed, Tang Yuan began pounding on it desperately. Chen Feng, what are you doing? Tang Yuan roared in anger. I picked at my ear and leaned against the doorframe, addressing the two inside. Don't you love having lessons? Keep having them in the bedroom. Keep going until I'm satisfied. I'm calling the police. Chen Feng. I heard these words and pushed open the bedroom door. A flash of disdain passed through both their eyes, as if they truly believed this threat had shaken me. Ignoring Tang Yuan, I stepped forward and grabbed the man by his collar. Tell me, have you been involved with my wife or not? The man shook his head firmly. Tang Yuan chimed in from the side. Chen Feng, this is all just a misunderstanding. Shut up. I turned my head slightly and roared at Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan closed his mouth and said no more. The man's eyes were filled with undisguised mockery and sarcasm as he reached out and patted my shoulder with deliberate force. Buddy, I'd advise you not to act rashly. Be careful, or you might end up losing both the person and the money. I rolled my eyes and flung my phone at the bridge of his nose. Call the police now. I'm reporting you for molesting my wife. The man's eyes widened in shock. What proof do you have? I stopped speaking and walked away with effortless grace under their stunned gazes. They certainly knew there were surveillance cameras throughout the maternity store, since neither would admit the truth. The footage would have to speak for itself. At daybreak, I pushed open the bedroom door. The two of them were huddled together against the wall, their faces filled with terror when they saw me. I didn't hold back, lifting my foot to kick the man's thigh. Get up. I forcefully dragged both of them to the maternity store. Lose both the person and the money. I don't want the person anymore, but I must get the money back. 08. As soon as I entered the maternity store, the gazes of several female sales associates fell upon me. They were startled at first, then immediately approached me. Sir, what happened? Following their line of sight, I glanced at the man whose collar I was gripping. His clothes were stained with blood, his face pale and haggard. Cancel all the courses my wife signed up for here. Tang Yuan kept her head down, not daring to say a word. Walking to the front desk, one of the women's hands flew across the keyboard. In the span of a breath, the woman pulled out 2 bills from the cash register and placed them on the counter. Sir, your wife has already completed all her courses. This is your membership refund. Looking at the loose change on the table, I spoke coldly. I want a refund for all the classes I took. The women exchanged glances, gasping in shock. The leader forced an awkward smile, rubbing her hands together. Sir, we're very sorry. I didn't let him finish speaking, yanking the crouching man up by his collar and pointing at his bruised face. This beast molested my pregnant wife. What's wrong with me withdrawing from a course? Several women looked at the man in shock, but still decided to review the surveillance footage before deciding whether to refund me. The maternity store grew increasingly crowded, with rubbernecking spectators gathering behind me. An instructor taking liberties with female students. How disgusting. People murmured. The crowd buzzed with discussion. Just as Tang Yuan was crying out that she had been slandered, the computer emitted an unspeakably vulgar sound. At this, everyone fell silent. Tang Yuan hadn't expected the surveillance footage to be retrieved so quickly. Breathing rapidly, she lunged at the computer like a mad woman, trying to shut it off. Even the man who had remained silent all along straightened up. He broke free from my grip and rushed to the front desk. With a loud crash, the computer fell to the ground and instantly went black. Panting heavily, his chest heaving violently, the man wiped his mouth as if he had accomplished some great feat, then burst into a frenzied laugh. He pointed at my nose. Chen Feng, you're a special kind of coward. Other men would be terrified of people finding out their wife cheated. But you're watching the surveillance footage right in front of everyone. He paused, then walked up to me and shoved my shoulder. I took a step back. Are you into some weird fetish? Enjoying watching your wife cheat on you? I ignored his words, just leaned in close to him and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Did you think this would make everyone shift their attention to me? The man stiffened momentarily, but quickly put on a confident front. He looked me up and down before turning to Tang Yuan beside him. Even if you don't care about Tang Yuan, don't you care about the child in her belly? Seeing that I remained silent, the man grew even more confident, as if certain I would back down. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and said, Tang Yuan means nothing to me. Watch out, or I'll ruin your family and keep you busy. Would I be afraid? I no longer cared about my wife, and the child in her belly wasn't even mine. What did I have to fear? It seems they're trying to threaten me using the child. Waving my hand dismissively, I let out a scornful laugh as if hearing the world's greatest joke. Pressing my hand on the man's shoulder, I glanced at Tang Yuan's swollen belly. Fine. I'd love to see how you plan to ruin my family. The man was left speechless, unable to utter a word, just as I pocketed the refunded course fee and was about to walk away with my hands in my pockets. Tang Yuan's voice unexpectedly rang out behind me. Chen Feng, I'm gonna get an abortion right now. I want a divorce from you. 09, I stopped in my tracks, but didn't turn around. Chen Feng, I can't spend another day with you. I must have been blind to ever be with you in the first place. I didn't respond. Couldn't even be bothered to lift my eyelids as I returned home. Just as I was lying on the couch thinking about taking a nap, the front door unexpectedly opened. Sitting up in surprise, I saw Tang Yuan walking into the house. I thought she wouldn't come back. Seeing me get up, Tang Yuan put away her angry expression and wore a faint smile as she walked over to hug my arm. Honey, what I said earlier was just angry words. Don't take it to heart. I was utterly puzzled. What could have made my wife, who was just furious and ready to divorce me, suddenly change like this? She leaned against my shoulder and closed her eyes. Tang Yuan grabbed my hand and pressed it against her belly. The atmosphere was unbearably awkward, neither of us speaking another word. After what felt like an eternity, she released my hand, her face still streaked with fresh tears. Husband, maybe we should separate for a while. I was somewhat surprised and opened my mouth. But before I could speak, Tang Yuan sighed and stroked her belly. That man will definitely retaliate against us. Let's separate for now and live together again after the baby is safely born. After a pause, she didn't even give me a chance to speak, continuing to stroke her belly as she spoke to herself. Give me half of the household money first. I'll take the baby and lay low for a while. If Tang Yuan hadn't mentioned money, I really wouldn't have understood what she was suddenly getting at. So it's about asking me for money, dividing the assets. I frowned, looking at Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan thought I was unwilling to agree. Under her nervous gaze, I pondered for a moment before saying, sure, why not? Tang Yuan seemed surprised by how readily I agreed. She clapped her hands excitedly, then threw her arms around my shoulders. I reached out and wrapped my arms around her waist. Her belly pressed against me, and I could hear her breathing in my ear. Tang Yuan spoke up. Honey, I only suggested this because I felt I had to. I'm so afraid that the baby and I will become a burden to you. You've already had such a conflict with that man. I'm afraid he might use me to threaten you. So even if that day really comes, it'll be easier for you. My heart sank. Her voice gradually faded, replaced by a piercing buzz in my mind. Suddenly, my arms tightened around her waist. She sensed it too. Her face filled with terror as she widened her eyes and tried to break free. But I held her firmly in place. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, since you're afraid of burdening me, I would never abandon you. Tang Yuan tensed up, her body stiff with uncertainty. She wanted to refuse, but couldn't find the words. After a pause, I stroked the back of her head, her soft hair brushing against my palm with a faint tickle. Tang Yuan's body grew increasingly cold, trembling as if she already knew my next move. Utterly terrified for the days to come. You'll stay in the bedroom and focus on your pregnancy. The woman released me, pressed her lips together, her face as pale as if she'd heard something utterly horrifying. After a long silence, Tang Yuan finally spoke. Are you trying to imprison me? I burst out laughing. This isn't confinement. I just want to protect her and the baby in her belly. Tang Yuan tried to argue back, but I half-dragged, half-pushed her into the bedroom. The expected cries for help never came. The house remained eerily quiet. I took a deep breath and leaned against the doorframe to smoke. There wasn't the slightest sound behind me, which struck me as odd. I picked up my phone and pulled up the real-time feed from the bedroom surveillance camera. In the dimly lit bedroom on the monitor, Tang Yuan sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her phone, her expression grave. When I zoomed in, I could even make out the images on her screen. She was texting that man. Tang Yuan, baby, we probably can't get the money anymore. Chen Feng has locked me in the bedroom right now. What should I do? A reply came quickly from the other side. Putting down the phone, I felt somewhat certain in my heart. I sat back on the sofa and casually flicked the cigarette but into the ashtray. Just then, the front door nearby was kicked open with a loud bang. I wasn't surprised. I walked over and opened the door. A man stood there brandishing a kitchen knife, with a large crowd behind him. He shouted, if you don't let Tang Yuan go, don't blame us for what happens next. Tang Yuan screamed inside the room. He's completely insane. I'm carrying his child, and he locked me in the bedroom. Faced with such awkward acting, I clicked my tongue impatiently, stepped aside by the door, and waved my hand. Come in. The man froze for 2 seconds. He gave me a puzzled look, but still walked straight toward the bedroom door. The moment the blade fell, it hacked a gaping hole through the wooden door. Tang Yuan's screams were incessant. The crowd behind me hurled accusations. How could you be so cruel, locking up your pregnant wife? Everyone can see how well your wife usually treats you. I turned to look and realized this guy had brought along all the neighborhood's gossipy aunties. Are they trying to drown me in these aunties' saliva? As the wooden door collapsed, Tang Yuan let out a shriek and ran toward the entrance. But before she could reach the door, her legs gave way and she collapsed to the floor, frantically clawing at her clothes as her face contorted in pain. Hands clutching her exposed pregnant belly. It hurts. It hurts. Help me. The aunties could take no more and pulled out their phones to call the police. At that moment, I calmly walked to the center of the crowd and bent down to stare at her. How could I not tell whether she's being genuine or fake with such a familiar act? Using the same trick once is enough. Did you really think you could fool me a second time? The man rushed to Tang Yuan's side in an instant, his expression one of absolute determination to protect her, his eyes resolute, his words filled with accusations against me. Shen Feng, you're nothing but scum. Look at Tang Yuan. What more do you want from her in this state? Even if you don't care about Tang Yuan, the child in her belly is yours. I glanced at the two, singing in harmony, with a half smile, brows furrowed, a flash of disdain in my eyes. If the child in her belly were really mine, why would you be defending her so fiercely? The man stammered incoherently for a long while, unable to form a complete sentence. The crowd behind them also came to their senses. If Tang Yuan had no connection whatsoever with this man, why would he go to such lengths to defend her and the child in her belly? If someone claimed it was an act of chivalry, no one would believe it. Perhaps realizing the standoff was going nowhere, Tang Yuan steeled herself, closed her eyes, and pretended to faint. Now everyone's attention was drawn to Tang Yuan. They quickly called 120 for an ambulance, but I pushed the man aside and grabbed Tang Yuan by the collar, lifting her entire body up. Her eyes suddenly flew open. What's the act for? Is this fun? Tang Yuan, you invited so many people today, aren't you ashamed? Tang Yuan and the man exchanged glances, convinced I had no evidence. After all, the surveillance computer at the maternity store had been smashed by them. Without a moment's hesitation, I pulled out my phone, quickly found the footage of them entangled in the bedroom, and turned the volume to maximum. For a moment, everyone held their breath, not daring to make a sound. The sound of their passionate encounter echoed through the silent house. Darling, Shen Feng is so easy to fool. The child isn't even his, yet he's so devoted. Later, you and the baby can spend his money while calling me daddy. Tang Yuan stared at me in disbelief, tried to snatch the phone from my hand. The man clenched his fists, unable to utter a single word. In the struggle, Tang Yuan fell onto the floor, looking at me with near despair. I threw the phone onto the ground, where it slid to the feet of the onlookers. The leading auntie couldn't bear to watch any longer. It's not like that. You all need to let me explain. Tang Yuan still wanted to struggle. I lazily yawned and walked up to her, leaning down to look at her belly, before glancing at the terrified Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan, take that bastard in your belly and get the hell out. Don't even think about getting a single cent from me.